and welcome to the Bossed Up Podcast, episode 461. I'm your host, Emily Aries, the founder and CEO of Bossed Up. And today I want to talk about keeping your cool when public speaking. And I want to start with a story from a recent keynoting experience that I had. But to be clear, this can relate to any public speaking experience. Whether you're on stage in front of a couple hundred people like I was, or if you're just giving a presentation at work, virtually or in person, things happen. Things go awry all the time. And so I want to talk about today how to be prepared. So it was just a few weeks ago now, I was keynoting in the very beautiful Newport Beach, California. And about halfway through my keynote, there was a moment of crowd interaction. I just handed the mic to an audience member who was starting to ask her question when there was a very loud rumble that just ran through the whole conference room. And it was a big room. This was like a auditorium size room. And at first I thought it sounded like the HVAC system had just kicked on for the first time, which is weird because it was very cool and, climate controlled the entire time. And I literally did not know what had happened, but the entire room, meanwhile, had erupted into nervous laughter, which I thought is such an interesting response. All of a sudden, there's a whole chorus of laughter happening, and I'm the one on stage who's completely left out of the joke and doesn't know what the hell's going on. And then it occurred to me that all of these Californians were much more familiar with what had just happened than I was as an out-of-stater from Colorado. It was an earthquake. Literally in the middle of my keynote, we had a 4.3 magnitude earthquake run right through us. And I genuinely did not know what was happening and didn't know how to make sense of it. Meanwhile, this poor woman who's holding my microphone, she just carries on. She just bravely continues to ask her question. And I was really faced with a choice from the main stage of, okay, what is the right thing to do here? And so my first key piece of advice, whenever something crazy happens in the middle of a talk, in the middle of a presentation, in the middle of a meeting even, don't ignore it. Address it. Because ignoring it, while it feels like the less distracting thing to do, is very much not. It leaves your audience hanging. It leaves everyone unresolved in a way. And it leaves people wondering if you are with them in the room, if you're experiencing the same thing that they are. And if there needs to be this moment of collective consciousness raising or collective release that needs to happen, by all means, let it happen. Let's address it proactively. And so in that moment, I first paused politely, right? The goal here is to pause, to actually create some space to address this, and to do so with decorum, with conscientiousness of others in the room. So in that moment, I asked this woman who was asking a question that I was very much not listening to by this point to just please hold on one second. We'll get to your question in just a moment. And then step 2 is to take the pulse, truly taking the pulse of the room and saying from the stage, how are we feeling? Hold on a second. Do we feel safe? That was my first question. Actually, my first question was, what the was that? As one audience member lovingly recalled to me right after this keynote, she was like, I loved that line. And I was like, oh my God, did I really drop an F-bomb in the middle of this pseudo emergency? And yes is the answer. As a matter of fact, I said, what the was that from the keynote stage? Luckily, this room full of women was very cool with my foul language in that moment. I was like, I am not from here, y'all. I am not used to what is happening right now. Please, someone confirm for me that was in fact an earthquake, which it was. And so my next question was, do we feel safe continuing? And it's interesting, taking the pulse of the audience in the room does something really critical. It creates that collective agency, a collective choice moment for everyone to address what's going on and to voice any concerns if they do have concerns with continuing. And this is true for a 3-person meeting as it is for a 300-person conference. In fact, I saw one of my favorite comedians, Demetri Martin, navigate this very kind of situation a few years ago. Actually, twice, weirdly, because he came back to Denver recently for a Netflix taping special that Brad and I got to see, and something similar happened again, which is so bizarre. But anyway, Demetri Martin last year was in Denver And in the middle of his set, a comedy set, someone has a medical emergency, like a full-on medical emergency. They're shouting from the audience for the house lights to be up, and we get the whole house lights on, and Dimitri stops from the stage, taken aback, as we all were, while the staff of the establishment address the situation. EMTs arrive on site shortly thereafter and carry someone out who was having a very bad time. Fortunately, we did find out that that person was okay after the fact, but it was really, really shocking and alarming as a situation for everybody involved. And Dimitri Martin was masterful in how he dealt with this with the crowd. He said, look, like, how are we feeling about continuing? Does this feel appropriate? Do we feel safe? And in that moment, he did what I think is the third key step to all of this, which is to empower your audience. Give others in the room a say on how we proceed. And that's exactly what he did. He basically took a poll if everyone was okay with continuing. You know, this was a somber moment and a scary moment. So he rightfully and understandably ratcheted down the tone of the room to address the emergency as it was happening and really get out of the way. He got off the stage for many minutes while the EMTs did their thing. But when he returned, he left it up to us as the audience to decide whether or not to continue. And I think he knew we were all going to clap and, shout and be raucous and excited to continue. We had paid good money to be there to see him. But it didn't matter if that was a foregone conclusion in his mind. Even if he knew he was going to proceed, the act of asking the audience is so critically important because it gives that opportunity for collective consensus building to happen. And it gives you cover as the speaker to continue with the endorsement and the social support of the rest of the room. And so that's what I did from up on that stage in the middle of navigating an earthquake. These Californians, by the way, were literally laughing because a 4.3 earthquake to them is like no big deal. That's like a Tuesday afternoon. To me, I was much more freaked out personally, and I had to navigate my own emotional regulation personally while keeping my cool from the stage and making a collective choice. When you're freaking out, when you are feeling stressed out, a lot of us have that fight, flight, or freeze response that makes us go inward. It makes us go inward and shut down, or it makes us go inward to run away and escape this horrible situation. The key here is to resist that intrinsic impulse to go inward and instead look outward to your audience as allies in this process, not as your judges who are judging you from the stage. People are rooting for you. People want you to succeed. That's what we forget when we're freaking out with nervousness as a public speaker. They want good things for you, just like you want good things for them, and you want good things for yourself in that moment. So enlist their social support as allies in navigating and deciding how to navigate when things go awry, a crisis, a medical emergency, whatever it might be. This agility, this sort of emotional agility that's associated with good emotional intelligence is also just, it comes with practice when it comes to public speaking. And so if we can be less ego-focused, less self-focused, less self-conscious from the stage or from the front of the room or front of the Zoom as someone who's leading a meeting or presentation, it enables us to be truly present with our audience and to be collaborators with them in creating a memorable experience. It also doesn't hurt to make a few jokes. My talk was on women's voices, assertive communication. So it was all about asserting yourself. And so we had a few jokes about like the power of women's voices, the earth-shaking power. What did I have? I don't remember. It was better then, I swear, from the stage. But, a little humor to break the tension doesn't hurt. There's a reason why we innately laughed in the face of an unexpected experience, like an earthquake. Like the whole room was laughing because that is a release of nervous energy. So allowing for that playfulness, allowing for a joke to be made, if you've got one from, your back pocket when you can, by all means, make it. And then when you collectively decide to move on, move on. That's what we did. We got back to her question And the show carried on and continued. And so I was proud of myself in that moment for kind of riding that wave, so to speak, and very literally, I suppose, from a tectonic standpoint. But it really made me think about, wow, if I got through an earthquake in the middle of a keynote, I think I can handle anything as a public speaker and as someone who presents in, small internal meetings or big external facing ones. That is the agility that I've trained for, that any one of us can get better at. And if you want to learn a lot more on how to be a confident and concise and cogent communicator, even when things go awry, I would highly encourage you to check out our Speak Up program. I just launched our most recent cohort, so it's currently just a waiting list that you can sign up for depending on when we offer the course again. But Speak Up is our 8-week-long assertive communication accelerator for women who just want to feel confident in making their voice heard, both in big ways like as a speaker and small day-to-day experiences of making your voice heard in the workplace. As always, I'd love to hear more about your experiences and your reactions to today's Boss Tip. What public speaking tips and tricks and tactics have worked best for you? What has gone awry in your meetings and how have you handled it in the past? I'd love to keep the conversation going as always in the Bossed Up Courage community on Facebook and in the Bossed Up group on LinkedIn. Until next time, let's keep bossin' in pursuit of our purpose, and together, let's lift as we climb.